To give up, you have to be dead, or completely incapacitated.
Hi. My name is not your beeswax. Agenda. Bang IT. IT dead people. But let's keep doing edge services. DevOps. Cisco certified not available. Acronyms, acronyms. Py mouth Python you nagging snake. C scripting let's do some. Trader baby. OO and AWS. Amazon Web Services. So let's go baby but. So IT dead people edge services. What is in an edge service? An edge service is a component which is exposed to the public internet. It acts as a gateway to all other services, which are referred to as platform services. Example, NGINX reverse proxy in front of some web resource servers. Here, NGINX acts as an edge service by routing public HTTP requests to the appropriate platform service. Let us assume some NGINX as a reverse proxy for two resource servers. Image server and text server. Requests for images are routed to image server, while requests for text are routed to text server. Now bank IT dead people is interconnected via edge services. Public network and cloud. But edge services are directly connected to API management tools. Meaning everything filters through API management tools, services or some like that. Some popular API management tools. APG API management, Comm open source API management, 3Scale API management platform, IBM API Connect, Broadcom API management, Young App API management, Dell Boomi, Oracle API Manager, MuleSoft API management platform, Azure API management. But API management tools are connected to user experience tools, business microservices, intelligent banking workflows aka business automation in the cloud. Anyway, all about API is. Again, what is an API? APIs are mechanisms that enable two software components to communicate with each other using a set of definitions and protocols. For example, the Weather Bureau's software system contains daily weather data. The weather app on your phone talks to this system via APIs and shows you daily weather updates on your phone. What does API stand for? API stands for Application Programming Interface. In the context of APIs, the word application refers to any software with a distinct function. Interface can be thought of as a contract of service between two applications. This contract defines how the two communicate with each other using requests and responses. Their API documentation contains information on how developers are to structure those requests and responses. How do APIs work? API architecture is usually explained in terms of client and server. The application sending the request is called the client, and the application sending the response is called the server. So in the weather example, the Bureau's weather database is the server, and the mobile app is the client. There are 4 different ways that APIs can work depending on when and why they were created. SOAP APIs. These APIs use Simple Object Access Protocol. Client and server exchange messages using XML. This is a less flexible API that was more popular in the past. RPC APIs. These APIs are called Remote Procedure Calls. The client completes a function, or procedure, on the server, and the server sends the output back to the client. WebSocket APIs. WebSocket API is another modern web API development that uses JSON objects to pass data. A WebSocket API supports two-way communication between client apps and the server. The server can send callback messages to connected clients, making it more efficient than REST API. REST APIs. These are the most popular and flexible APIs found on the web today. The client sends requests to the server as data. The server uses this client input to start internal functions and returns output data back to the client. What are REST APIs? REST stands for Representational State Transfer. REST defines a set of functions like get, put, delete, etc. that clients can use to access server data. Clients and servers exchange data using HTTP. The main feature of REST API is statelessness. Statelessness means that servers do not save client data between requests. Client requests to the server are similar to URLs you type in your browser to visit a website. The response from the server is plain data, without the typical graphical rendering of a web page. What is Web API? A Web API or Web Service API is an application processing interface between a web server and web browser. All web services are APIs, but not all APIs are web services. REST API is a special type of web API that uses the standard architectural style explained above. The different terms around APIs, like Java API or Service APIs, exist because historically, APIs were created before the World Wide Web. Modern web APIs are REST APIs, and the terms can be used interchangeably. What are API integrations? API integrations are software components that automatically update data between clients and servers. Some examples of API integrations are when automatic data sync to the cloud from your phone image gallery, or the time and date automatically sync on your laptop when you travel to another time zone. Enterprises can also use them to efficiently automate many system functions. What are the benefits of REST APIs? REST APIs offer 4 main benefits. 1. Integration. APIs are used to integrate new applications with existing software systems. This increases development speed because each functionality doesn't have to be written from scratch. You can use APIs to leverage existing code. 2. Innovation. Entire industries can change with the arrival of a new app. Businesses need to respond quickly and support the rapid deployment of innovative services. They can do this by making changes at the API level without having to rewrite the whole code. 3. Expansion. APIs present a unique opportunity for businesses to meet their clients' needs across different platforms. For example, Maps API allows map information integration via websites, Android, iOS, etc. Any business can give similar access to their internal databases by using free or paid APIs. 4. Ease of maintenance. The API acts as a gateway between two systems. Each system is obliged to make internal changes so that the API is not impacted. This way, any future code changes by one party do not impact the other party. What are the different types of APIs? APIs are classified both according to their architecture and scope of use. We have already explored the main types of API architectures, so let's take a look at the scope of use. Private APIs. These are internal to an enterprise and only used for connecting systems and data within the business. Public APIs. These are open to the public and may be used by anyone. There may or not be some authorization and cost associated with these types of APIs. Partner APIs. These are only accessible by authorized external developers to aid business-to-business partnerships. Composite APIs. These combine 2 or more different APIs to address complex system requirements or behaviors. What is an API endpoint and why is it important? API endpoints are the final touchpoints in the API communication system. These include server URLs, services, and other specific digital locations from where information is sent and received between systems. API endpoints are critical to enterprises for 2 main reasons. 1. Security. API endpoints make the system vulnerable to attack. API monitoring is crucial for preventing misuse. 2. Performance. API endpoints, especially high-traffic ones, can cause bottlenecks and affect system performance. How to secure a REST API? All APIs must be secured through proper authentication and monitoring. The 2 main ways to secure REST APIs include 1. Authentication tokens. These are used to authorize users to make the API call. Authentication tokens check that the users are who they claim to be and that they have access rights for that particular API call. For example, when you log into your email server, your email client uses authentication tokens for secure access. 2. API keys. API keys verify the program or application making the API call. They identify the application and ensure it has the access rights required to make the particular API call. API keys are not as secure as tokens, but they allow API monitoring in order to gather data on usage. You may have noticed a long string of characters and numbers in your browser URL when you visit different websites. This string is an API key the website uses to make internal API calls. How to create an API? Due diligence and effort are required to build an API that other developers will want to work with and trust. These are the 5 steps required for high-quality API design. 1. Plan the API. API specifications, like OpenAPI, provide the blueprint for your API design. It is better to think about different use cases in advance and ensure the API adheres to current API development standards. 2. Build the API designers prototype APIs using boilerplate code. Once the prototype is tested, developers can customize it to internal specifications. 3. Test the API. API testing is the same as software testing and must be done to prevent bugs and defects. API testing tools can be used to strength test the API against cyber attacks. 4. Document the API. While APIs are self-explanatory, API documentation acts as a guide to improve usability. Well-documented APIs that offer a range of functions and use cases tend to be more popular in a service-oriented architecture. 5. Market the API. Just as Amazon is an online marketplace for retail, API marketplaces exist for developers to buy and sell other APIs. Listing your API can allow you to monetize it. What is API testing? API testing strategies are similar to other software testing methodologies. The main focus is on validating server responses. API testing includes making multiple requests to API endpoints for performance testing, writing unit tests for checking business logic and functional correctness, security testing by simulating system attacks. How to write API documentation? Writing comprehensive API documentation is part of the API management process. API documentation can be auto-generated using tools or written manually. Some best practices include writing explanations in simple, easy-to-read English. Documents generated by tools can become wordy and require editing. Using code samples to explain functionality. Maintaining the documentation so it is accurate and up-to-date. Aiming the writing style at beginners. Covering all the problems the API can solve for the users. How to use an API? The steps to implement a new API include obtaining an API key. This is done by creating a verified account with the API provider. Set up an HTTP API client. This tool allows you to structure API requests easily using the API keys received. If you don't have an API client, you can try to structure the request yourself in your browser by referring to the API documentation. Once you are comfortable with the new API syntax, you can start using it in your code. Where can I find new APIs? New web APIs can be found on API marketplaces and API directories. API marketplaces are open platforms where anyone can list an API for sale. API directories are controlled repositories regulated by the directory owner. Expert API designers may assess and test a new API before adding it to their directory. Some popular API websites include Rapid API - the largest global API market with over 10,000 public APIs and 1 million active developers on site. Rapid API allows users to test APIs directly on the platform before committing to purchase. Public APIs – the platform groups remote APIs into 40 niche categories, making it easier to browse and find the right one to meet your needs. A py23 and APIlist – both these websites have lists of 500+ web APIs, along with in-depth information on how to use them. What is an API gateway? An API gateway is an API management tool for enterprise clients that use a broad range of backend services. API gateways typically handle common tasks like user authentication, statistics, and rate management that are applicable across all API calls. Amazon API Gateway is a fully managed service that makes it easy for developers to create, publish, maintain, monitor, and secure APIs at any scale. It handles all the tasks involved in accepting and processing thousands of concurrent API calls, including traffic management, core support, authorization, and access control, throttling, monitoring, and API version management. Boom boom boom. CCNA. Acknowledgement IP addressing basics. Configuring IP addressing settings. Configuring TCP/IP on systems. You can modify the TCP/IP configuration settings on your system. The steps are different depending on the operating system you are running, but I will show you, son, with my words. On Win, Mac and Linux. So Win. To change the TCP/IP setting on Win system, use these. Click Start, and type Control. Choose Control Panel, then Network and Internet, then Network and Sharing Center. Boom. Click Change Adapter Settings link on the left. Right-click Ethernet and choose Properties. Then, select Internet Protocol version 4. TCP/IPv4, and choose Properties. In the Properties. Then, Properties dialog box, notice that, by default, the radio button Obtain an IP address automatically is selected, which means that the system is configured as a DHCP client, Dynamic Host Control Protocol client. To configure IP address statically, choose Use the following IP address, and then enter the IP address, subnet mask, and default gateway setting for the system. Boom. Then to configure the system to use a specific DNS server, domain name system server, choose the following DNS server addresses and then enter the IP address of the DNS, domain name system server, and then enter IP address of the DNS server you want to use, DNS. Then boom. Then, choose OK and close the window. Boom. On Linux. There are few different ways you can use to modify your IP address on Linux systems depending on the distribution. For years, administrators used ifconfig command to change the IP address with height following syntax. ifconfig space ETH0 space then IP address space net mask space then subnet mask. But ETH0 is the interface or network card you are modifying. You can also change your IP address in Linux using the graphical interface. On your Linux system, in the top right corner, there is a network icon. Right-click and choose Edit Connections. Select your connection and then choose the settings icon at the bottom, looks like a gear icon, duh. Choose the IPv4 settings tab. In the method drop-down list, choose Manual. Click the Add button to add the IP address, subnet mask, and default gate what you want to use. Gateway boom boom. Then, enter IP address of the DNS, domain name system servers and then click Save. Close all windows. Boom. No boot but. Whack macOS. Modify your macOS IP address using following tings, dolly mop for a job. From the Apple menu, choose System Preferences. Then choose Network. Select your network interface on the left. Click the Advanced button in the bottom right corner. Go to your corner Whack Mac. Then choose TCP/IP tab. To configure an IP address manually, from the Configure IPv4 drop-down list, choose Manually. Then enter your IP address, subnet mask, and router address, default gateway. Boom boom. Day what? Day 13. IGP, Interior Gateway Protocol. IGRP, Interior Gateway Routing Protocol. IKE, Internet Key Exchange. IMAP4, Internet Message Access Protocol version 4. InterNIC, Internet Network Information Center. IoT, Internet of Things. IP, Internet Protocol. IPAM, IP Address Management. IPS, Intrusion Prevention System. IPsec, Internet Protocol Security. Mouth Python you nagging snake. Python literals. Some summary. 1. Literals are notations for representing some fixed values in code. Python has various types of literals. For example, a literal can be a number, numeric literals, for example, 123, or a string literals, for example, I am a literal. 2. The binary system is a system of numbers that employs 2 as the base. Therefore, a binary number is made up of zeros and ones only. For example, 1010 is 10 in decimal. Octal and hexadecimal numeration systems, similarly, employ 8 and 16 as their bases respectively. The hexadecimal system uses the decimal numbers and 6 extra letters. 3. Integers, or simply ints, are one of the numerical types supported by Python. They are numbers written without a fractional component, for example, 256, or -1, negative integers. 4. Floating point numbers, or simply floats, are another one of the numerical types supported by Python. They are numbers that contain, or are able to contain, a fractional component, for example, 1.27. 5. To encode an apostrophe or a quote inside a string, you can either use the escape character, for example, I'm happy, or open and close the string using an opposite set of symbols to the ones you wish to encode, for example, I'm happy. To encode an apostrophe, and he said Python, not Typhoon, to encode a double quote. 6. Boolean values are the two constant objects true and false used to represent truth values. In numeric contexts, 1 is true, while 0 is false. Extra, sun. There is one more, special literal that is used in Python, the none literal. This literal is a so-called none-type object, and it is used to represent the absence of a value. Now but. Trader stuff but. Money market instruments still. Commercial paper versus bonds. Both commercial paper and bonds are debt instruments. However, there are important differences between them that are useful to know. Commercial paper maturities extend from 1 to 270 days. Bonds mature in 1 to 30 years. Commercial paper has no coupon payments. Everything is repaid at maturity, with one payment. Bonds pay interest at regular intervals, twice a year, over the life of the loan. Example of commercial paper. Let's say a retail firm is looking for short-term funding to finance some new inventory for an upcoming holiday season. The firm needs $10 million. It offers investors commercial paper with a face value of $10.1 million. This is in line with prevailing interest rates. When the commercial paper matures, investors in effect receive an interest payment of $100,000 along with the $10 million they loaned out. This equates to an interest rate of 1%. This interest rate can be adjusted for time, contingent on the number of days the commercial paper is outstanding. Is commercial paper a type of debt? Yes. Commercial paper is short-term, unsecured debt issued by institutions who want to raise capital needed for a short amount of time. It's an alternative to having to go through the effort and cost involved in getting a business loan. Who are the primary buyers of commercial paper? Due to the large minimum denominations, usually $100,000 or more, large institutions comprise the main buyers of commercial paper. According to the SEC, these include investment companies, retirement accounts, state and local governments, financial and non-financial firms. How do individuals invest in commercial paper? The minimum investment in commercial paper is usually $100,000. So the best way for smaller investors to invest in commercial paper is to put their money in the companies that buy it. These include money market funds, mutual funds, and even exchange-traded funds. The bottom line. Commercial paper is unsecured debt with short terms, up to 270 days, issued by companies with high credit ratings. It offers a less expensive way to raise money to pay short-term expenses compared to getting a business loan. Commercial paper can also be attractive for issuers due to the low interest rate that's usually attached to it. While that rate isn't always as appealing to investors, it can be a higher return than that offered by some bonds, such as treasuries. Plus, it's an investment option that can help diversify portfolios. Investors in commercial paper are usually institutions rather than individuals, due to the large minimum denominations involved. Commercial paper may be seen as a low-risk investment due to the high credit rating preferred for issuers. Bear in mind, however, that like any other investment, it involves some degree of risk. Boom but commercial paper but. Finito. Finish, son. Bye. But AWS. Amazon Web Services. Questions and answers. Q&A. What advantages does a database administrator obtain by using the Amazon Relational Database Service, RDS? RDS simplifies relational database administration tasks. Boom. A cloud practitioner requires point-in-time recovery, PITR, for an Amazon DynamoDB table. Who is responsible for configuring and performing backups? The customer is responsible for configuring and AWS is responsible for performing backups. Boom. A large company is interested in avoiding long-term contracts and moving from fixed costs to variable costs. What is the value proposition of AWS for this company? Pay-as-you-go pricing. Boom. A customer needs to determine total cost of ownership, TCO, for a workload that requires physical isolation. Which hosting model should be accounted for? Dedicated hosts. Which tasks can a user complete using the AWS cost management tools? Break down AWS costs by day, service, and linked AWS account. And create budgets and receive notifications if current or forecasted usage exceeds the budgets. Which of the following AWS services are compute services? AWS Batch and AWS Elastic Beanstalk. Which design principles are enabled by the AWS cloud to improve the operation of workloads? Loose coupling and remove single points of failure. The user is planning to launch 3 EC2 instances behind a single elastic load balancer. The deployment should be highly available. Launch the instances across multiple availability zones in a single AWS region. Which resource should a new user on AWS use to get help with deploying popular technologies based on AWS best practices, including architecture and deployment instructions? AWS Quick Starts. A company needs to publish messages to thousands of subscribers simultaneously using a push mechanism. Which AWS service should the company use? Amazon Simple Notification Service, Amazon SNS. Boom boom. Boom. Sun boom boom. Bye bye. Keep learning, you wooden spoon. For the grill, son.